Okay, good afternoon, committee members and other parties of interest. This is the Reconvened Evaluation Committee meeting for RFP 25-00378, Construction Manager at Risk for the CDBG-DR Single Family Housing Repair and Replacement Program. My name is Ethan Kersey and I'm the buyer assigned to this project. This meeting is being held in part by means of communications media technology and has been publicly noticed. Active participation will be for committee members only. Provisions have been made for any member of the public desiring to have access to view the meeting. The recording will also be available after the meeting has ended. Please be advised that the cone of silence is still in effect. All meetings and correspondence must include me. Again, for the record, this meeting is being recorded and has been publicly noticed. At this time, I will ask each committee member to reintroduce themselves to the record, beginning with the committee chair.
Good afternoon, Rob Hendrickson, Management and Budget and CDBG-DR Program Manager.
Audrey Ziegler, Social Services Department.
Rob Parkinson, Management and Budget, Criminal Justice and Grants Management Office.
John Mueller, Director for Facilities and Real Estate, Hillsborough County.
Brenda Biasio with Affordable Housing. Jim Rogers, Engineer with the Water Resources Department.
Tara Williams, Architectural Services Manager, Capital Programs.
Nicole Gelber, Affordable Housing.
Thank you. On January 16th, 2026, the evaluation committee met and requested oral presentations from all potentially acceptable proposers for RFP 25-00378. These presentations were completed today, February 9th, 2026, and the recordings of such presentations will be made publicly available. The committee will now discuss and score the proposals based on the evaluation criteria set forth in the solicitation. The committee will score by consensus. The evaluation committee chair, Rob Hendrickson, will lead the discussion. And with that, Rob, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ethan. Again, thank you everyone on the meeting for your proposals and time today. But I'd like to do, we're going to start, well, let's back up a little. We're going to do this one firm at a time. And in keeping with the way we did comments in our last meeting, starting the call, we'll work our way counterclockwise to me and my role. Then I can get a sense for where we are in scores, see if there are any significant, discrepancies between those, and land on numbers that we feel accurately represent the quality of the materials in what we just heard from orals for each of the three firms we're evaluating. We'll be doing this in 4 categories with the following total points allowed for each. Keep me honest, Ethan. The ability of the firm and its professional personnel, 40 points. Experience with similar relevant projects, 30. Approach to project delivery, 20. In the final category, resources and ability to meet the schedule, 10.
Correct.
Any questions before? The other thing I'll add is that when it gets to me, I will summarize the results of the reference checks I conducted for all the firms. I will let everyone know who's on the questions I asked. I'll do that one time. And then I'll share average numerical scores based on those short survey questions. Then I'll add a little bit of context and commentary around other things I heard to just give you a sense for what the consensus was on that. Any questions before we start?
I do not believe I stated what will go in alphabetical order.
Yeah, so we're going to start with Ducky, then Dynamic, then Lemoyne in that order. Again, one firm, and what I will do is we'll go through all those categories, 4 categories for each per person, so that by the time it gets to me, I will have gotten several scores, 4 scores for all of you for each category for a given firm, and then we'll rinse and repeat. Sound good? Okay, we'll start with Ducky and Nicole, and if you just name the categories and the score you gave, and a little bit about why. I'm going to take notes on that just to make sure I understand where we're at. And go ahead.
So the ability of the Seymour firm and its professional personnel, I gave them a 38. I thought that they've had excellent experience. They have dedicated clients, subject matter experts. Based on their presentation today, it seems like they have a great connection to Hillsborough-based subcontractors, and I feel like that comes with your personnel experience.
Okay. And then the experience with similar relevant projects, where did you end up on that?
I gave them a 28.
28 out of 30 for that.
Just keep going down.
Yeah, and either give an overall summary of where you thought they were and give me the 4 scores, or say a little bit about each. It's up to you guys.
Sure. Okay. So then for the Seymour's firm approach to product delivery, I gave them an 18 out of 20.
Okay.
And for the CMAR's resources and ability to meet schedule, I give them.
Fine. Okay, thank you. Okay.
So for criteria one, ability of firm and its staff. I think they emphasized a lot today about how this is like their main business, that they're not doing a lot of other types of projects. That really this is the core focus of their entire company, which I think is pretty important, and gives a really good understanding of the process and how to deal with these things. So I thought their ability seems pretty strong in my opinion. So I gave them, I got too many pages, 35 out of 40 for that category. Their experience with similar projects, I gave a 28 out of 30. I think because they do this day in and day out, I think that holds a lot of weight for their demonstration of those project types. I should have put all this on one page. I also really liked when they were talking today about how they deal with their subcontractors. So this goes into their approach in project delivery, how they deal with their subcontractors, how they deal with HOAs and the requirements for any mobile homes. That they have a pretty good understanding of how to have a repeatable process, but still being adaptable based off of site constraints or permitting issues, zoning issues. They seem like they have a really good organization when they're using Monday.com. I'm pretty familiar with that software, so it's easy to jump into from our side of the table and kind of get acquainted with it and watch their subcontractors. And I really thought their comments about community outreach and sitting with the homeowners probably by far and away stood out to me more than anybody else. They really understood, what it takes to be a good community partner. So for that category, I gave them an 18.
Okay. And then the last one was a
Category
Yeah.
for schedule, I gave them a 9.
9 out of 10. Thank you.
So for the ability, I gave them a 32. This is an absolutely solid team, covered all of the bases. I don't have any doubts about the qualifications. For their similar projects, I gave them 20. There was a lot of good CDBG stuff there. Tara said this, they emphasized this was their core business. I found it a little odd that the specific projects didn't include the key personnel, and that's one of the reasons I asked that question of who was on the key projects, but they were clear to state that all of the folks on that call had some involvement. So I ended up with a 20. Definitely good experience. For the approach, it's a solid approach. I did like the examples of some of the dashboards and things they can provide for us, so I gave them a 14 for that. And schedule, the ability to meet schedule and budget, it had the things that I expect to see in there, so I gave them 7.
Thank you.
Okay, so for A1, I scored a 39, for A2, a 29, and I'll give you a summary at the end. For A3, a 19, and for A4, a 9. I thought this was an exceptional presentation and application. They have an excellent track record, over 2,200 rehabs. I was particularly impressed with their community outreach and how they managed that. They had a highly comprehensive proposal, including all of the information regarding permitting and what's important. Their turnkey solutions in terms of project delivery, I thought were excellent with 0 audit findings, and I really like their tri-zonal model. I think that will really facilitate communication and understanding of what areas maybe some subcontractors are in and not in others that they'd be able to identify quickly. And their proposal really showed a superior understanding of project processes, bottlenecks, and the personnel that they need to execute the projects.
Thank you.
You're up.
Yeah.
First one, 35, second one, 25, 18, and 9 for total score 87. Again, what I said in the previous meeting is these are 3 very strong people. It's just want to repeat that. So anything we say as improvement, just keep that in mind. I know that some of them are listening. They're, again, 3 very good companies. Would have loved to see, the only really comment I would have seen, really find a little bit more specificity on their subcontracting, not their planning, not whatever, but it was a large list of subcontractors. I was a little more definitive on it. Not to say that won't happen, but really, and I don't even know that, I'll call that a comment more than anything. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
For A1, 38.
Okay.
A2, 20. A3, 17.
Okay.
A4, 9. And just to dovetail on what other folks have said, I think they had great RFP compliance with this proposal. I appreciated that they had 0 audit findings. I also appreciated that they had dedicated federal compliance and safety officers. I appreciated the fact that they had a very thoughtful approach to warranty calls at the highest level. And I really appreciated the door-to-door outreach activities that they've done in other jurisdictions. I think that could be something that would be very valuable for us.
You, Audrey.
136, A2 25, A3 19, and A4 8. I thought the proposal was excellent, and today's presentation really solidified their ability and the culture of their work, which is really to assist the residents that have been impacted. From a social services perspective, I think that was extremely needed to be sensitive to where the customers are coming from with the delay and what they've already experienced. And then I'm really encouraged that they already work with BDO and have that relationship and familiarity with that team and that product from Canopy.
Thank you, Audrey. I will give my scores before I do the reference check portion. On the category 1, I gave 36, category 2, 28, category 3, 19, and category 4, 10. I also agree that the experience working with Horn/BDO is a practical advantage in the sense of being able to hit the ground running and familiarity with process, approach, systems, etc. I really liked Ducky's answer to the small business participation question and their emphasis on removing layers. I think they may not be as big as some of the other firms today, but in some respects that might translate into more nimbleness. I also like the fact that they had the largest contingent of local resources living in and around Hillsborough, and that they had the most familiarity actually working with GCs and contractors. In my mind, having familiarity with that means you skip the step of hoping they perform. You actually have some kind of track record with which to base your decisions. So for those reasons, to echo what you said, John, all very strong proposals and teams, but those are the things that stood out for me from both the proposal, but especially today's oral presentation. let me do the reference checks and then I'll come back to scoring because I think that's part of the conversation. Okay, all four of Ducky's references, I managed to reach. And again, more for the group on the call. I asked 6 questions that required a 1 to 5 score: overall experience, ability to partner, collaborate, and communicate, overall DR knowledge as applied to the situation, capacity and ability to complete work on time and to schedule, ability to engage and build positive relationships with homeowners or other key stakeholders. I also asked if there were any significant concerns we should be made aware of and whether or not the reference would have selected the firm had they to do it all over again. The scores on the quantitative questions out of 5 average 4.8, which is a very good number. But keep in mind, the sample sizes for all of these are in the handful. So these could easily be 1 or 2 points higher or lower just based on the person, right? Some people are more stingy with giving higher marks than others, but a 4.8 of all references said they would work with Ducky again. I got a definitely, always done great work, in a heartbeat, no reservations. Yes, and more work has been assigned since, and yes, has invited them to participate in other bids that have occurred after the work in question. So that's how the 4 references for Ducky panned out. And I'll do this the same for the other firms when it comes to the after we've done the round. So going back to our scores. Currently, just based on what we're discussing, we've got scores in the following ranges. And I'll ask if anyone has any heartburn where they've landed at this point. In terms of the overall ability of the firm and its expertise, would the group be satisfied with an overall score of 36?
So
Yeah.
that's the first one.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. that's
Yeah.
where
Okay.
Criteria A1 for Ducky's 36. Everyone
Correct.
agrees?
Yep. A2, see, I'm naming it correctly now, Ethan, there we go. Category A2, would the group be satisfied with a 26 for firms' experience with similar relevant projects?
Yes.
Yes.
26.
Yes. For A3, approach to project delivery, would everyone be satisfied with an 18?
Yes.
And
Okay, 18.
would everyone be satisfied with a 9 for their resources and ability to meet schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was that 89?
It is. I believe that's the correct number,
So
right?
just to recap, that's a 36, 26, 18, and 9. Everyone in consensus with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Great. So we added up, that was an 89 final, right, Ethan?
Yes, and I will recap that at the end.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, we're off to the races. Now we move on to,
I just need to say it. Okay.
I didn't hear what to do with
No,
that.
no.
It's redundant to be in.
I'm sorry. It's finished.
We're going to move the conversation to be repeated, but for dynamic next. And we're going to do the same drill because you guys are so good at it. So let's start with that.
A1, I have 34. A2, I have 24. A3, I have 17. And A4, I have 8.
8.
Yes. I like this proposal. I think that their line of credit shows that they, have the means to take on a large scale project like this. I'm still a little bit concerned about the Catholic Charities for outreach, just based on capacity, and also they mentioned a 4 to 6 month lead up to that, so, just a little bit concerned on that for outreach. I also felt like their, compliance and monitoring was a little bit less robust than some of the other ones.
Okay.
So for A1, I had a 33. A2, 24. A3-16 and A4.
Okay.
A4. So from there, I think they were the only ones that show their approach with using like QR codes and having the ability for their subcontractors to kind of see real time what, you know, they need to do in the construction process and insight, which I think is kind of a newer thing that you're seeing in construction. And I think it's pretty interesting to see it used here also, because you could have a lot of trades kind of ongoing in such a tight time frame at once. So being able to get to that information that they need readily, I think is important. So I'd like to see that they were using that. I made a note about their scorecard and their monthly monitoring. They were one of the few that actually talked about that. So I think that was good to know that they're monitoring with their subcontractors on a monthly basis, that we can see real documentation on that. And it's not just through emails or, you know, word of mouth, phone calls kind of thing, that things are being implemented to kind of keep track of process and, you know, how to do any kind of remediation if there is an issue. I just made a note about, I thought that their, I don't know what his title was, but their construction manager, the main point of contact there, he seemed really well equipped to be able to handle the workload and be able to manage all the subcontractors, and really knowledgeable about the process. I thought that he did a really nice job kind of just answering all of our questions in general. And the only other thing I was noting is just less Florida-based experience than others. That's all.
Thank you. Kim?
Okay. For the first category, I gave them a 22. The people they presented are clearly qualified, and they certainly did try to address some of our concerns about what their hiring plan was and their plan to build business relationships with local firms. But I just can't really judge the quality of personnel without knowing who that personnel is or who those business partners are all going to be.
Can you give me that score again?
22.
Thank you.
So, project experience, I scored them 22. I thought there was a lot of good experience. Even though it wasn't as much in Florida, it's still the Louisiana, Alabama, it's still the coastal communities. So I think that experience is still very applicable. What did give me a little bit of pause was one of those projects was specifically BHL and not the prime firm. So I'm not sure how to judge that, even less so with them not being, sounds like they're not a partner, but a sub-consultant. But still, I thought good experience. The project approach, I gave them a 16. Again, it had kind of all the stuff I expected, plus the QR code thing, which I had not seen before, and that is awesome. So I think big props for that. And then schedule and budget, you know, I see the staff availability and the schedule, and that's all pretty typical stuff I expect to see, which is good. So I gave them a 7. So 22, 22, 16, 7.
Good, thank you.
A1, I scored dynamic a 35, A2, a 24, A3, an 18, and A4, an 8. I thought that they also had a strong proposal, another strong applicant. I liked how they specifically went through what their program flow is and how that ties into things like quality with the QR code and ensuring things being done properly. how they handle unforeseen conditions. They were specific about their scope reconciliation process. They have technology-enabled management. So in terms of project delivery, I thought that they were doing a good job there as well. And also, in terms of their ability to meet the schedule, they presented a superior understanding of those processes as well.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so let me give you the scores first. First one, 36, then 26, then 17 and 9. So I want to make a comment here. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I heard Kim's comment. I was a little disappointed on one question I asked him about, I truly hope BHL is involved in this project and not just a minor partner, because in their proposal, they were references from them. They were the ones that had a lot of examples, but when I asked the question, I was merely trying to find out, hey, is this your key partner? I saw that as a positive, but somebody here, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I heard was a very lukewarm response, that they're just another group, but yet that brought strength in it. So I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt that I'm not sure they understood what I was asking, but their proposal speaks clearly about them being involved. And I believe, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, I read a few reference checks on them, and their reference checks might even be some in Florida, I can't remember. But anyways, so my comment.
I got this. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Robert?
A1, 35, A2, 27, A3, 16, and A4, 8. Just in summary, obviously the proposer has significant CDBG-DR experience over multiple states. I appreciated that they have 0 accidents or reportable injuries. They appear to have assembled a team of local partners and subcontractors. I really appreciated their thoughtfulness of their hurricane contingency plan. Hurricanes are an expectation in our states.
A1 37, A2 27, A3 19, and A4 9. I really appreciate the structure they have in place to address customer inquiries and concerns from the application through the construction with managers and a dedicated liaison role. The QR code system for the contractors seems like an excellent QC opportunity to avoid issues or mistakes and selecting materials and what each job should look for. I made a note about the weekly scorecards and how those are reviewed for expectations. And then the flexibility they mentioned with the subs when they're performing and not performing, and recognizing that, and then the confidence that comes with that of where else you have to place the jobs if one sub isn't able to successfully complete it, that they were confident they could just move the work and keep things going. It didn't seem to be a stall. So those are my scores and why.
Thank you. I'll do what you guys did, it's simplest. I gave it 37, A1, A2 a 28, A3 a 16, A4 a 7. This is a larger firm with, it seems like a pretty deep bench and a lot of experience. I appreciated that they spent time in the proposal really listing some practical ways to save time, construction practices to save time, that they covered fraud, waste, and abuse. I mentioned when we did our first feedback session, they zeroed in on an apprenticeship program, which I think has a nice ring to it when it comes to our community. And they had read the OEM after action report from the storms, which shows initiative and thinking more strategically around what we're doing. I would say from the perspective of today and what we learn more about, again, a little bit partial to a greater Florida contingent, just because people who are here understand the region better and in the subcontractor community better. I think that is an advantage for something like this. On the other hand, I do think that they provided some very real answers around some of the challenges. For example, when we talked about the amount of time that's passed, like when it comes to repairs, how with warranty claims that can get complicated when there's a sort of bleed over from the scope of work, outside of the scope of work. So all of that, I think, was good. And it was a quote that actually I like, which is, "No one is impressed when we show up." And I think that captures our challenge on an outreach standpoint. So that's where how I felt about that. I do think for orals that I appreciate Dynamic answering our questions, but I wish they had spent a little bit more time on really reiterating their strengths and differential advantage from the proposals. I think we spent almost the entire time just on about 6 or 7 questions. And I think reiterating their strengths might have given us a little bit more context around the proposals. So that's where I landed on that. In terms of reference checks, Dynamic also provided for 4 reference checks, and I was able to reach 3 of the 4. And for the sake of full transparency, I kept Ethan apprised of any gaps along the way to allow each of the firms to reach out to those they listed, so that they could get back to me. I want to make sure they had ample opportunity to do that. But I did put the onus on them to do so, as opposed to me calling back 5, 6 times. I made the call. That's a complete message. I worked with Ethan. And as a rule, that did work. So I appreciate everyone's help there. So for the 3 references, those numerical averages ended up being a 4.4 out of 5. I will say that of the 3, all 3 said they would work with Dynamic again. I got it most definitely and absolutely. As to significant concerns, the answer to that was none. That they had broken through some obstacles, and the Maui example was raised, and that they're a good team that can produce, and they're very customer focused. So again, I think a strong set of references, and the numerical numbers, like I said, just keep those in context. We're looking at very small sample size, and small deviations in the way people score can affect things. But bottom line is every reference would have chosen them again and didn't have any concerns for us to be aware of on that basis. So let me get back to scorings. Okay, so we were clustered right around the mid-30s, but Kim, I want to give you a chance to opine on that. You were a little bit lower at a 22
Yes.
for the reasons that you cited. I want
Yeah.
to mention that because our job is to kind of coalesce around a number. The range really was between 37. Well, we had mid-30s pretty much, a little high, a little low, but all kind of around the 35 on an average basis. That's not what we're doing, with yours being a 22. Given that, thoughts on a number that's a little bit higher than what you had what are your thoughts on this?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely go up. I do want to stress that I can't judge the entire team if I don't know the entire team.
Okay.
So it's like, 38 to me would feel excessive, because I feel like
Okay.
I can only know maybe 3/4 of the team.
Right.
But yeah, I don't want to torpedo their chances by insisting on a 22. That's not what I'm here
Well, no,
for.
but we need to hear
So
each other
could we
out.
do? Yeah, I mean, mid-30s makes sense, 34.
And I'll ask the group if 34 is acceptable. And I wanted to give you a chance to speak though, because you have legitimate concerns. We need to keep that into account. 33, 34, how do we
I
feel?
would say higher, because their track record shows them being successful. I would think that they have good hiring practices, and I mean, they have a vested interest in being successful and making sure they have the right players. I understand your
Oh,
point.
yeah, I have no doubts that they have good vetting and hiring practices. It's just, if I'm asked to score the team, and I don't know the whole team.
What would be other scores?
Across the team for this?
Yeah,
Just rattle off the numbers.
yeah, what was scored?
Yeah, sure. 34, 33, 22, 35, 36, 35, 37, 37.
Wait, 34, 33.
22, 35, 36, 35, 37, after giving Kim a chance to ask her what she might be comfortable with. She threw out 34. Audrey, you said you'd like it to potentially be higher, but that was the one counterpoint. How about the rest of the team? How are we feeling about it?
It's.
I think that is an appropriate score.
35 is the
Still-
median.
I'm okay with
That's
it.
how we do it, so.
Mathematically telling you that.
So 34, you had a bit of concern with. 35, you could live with it, are you okay with? Does anyone are you okay with 35?
Yeah.
Is 35 okay with the group?
Okay, it's about 36, whatever.
Okay, we're gonna do it.
35 for A1 for dynamic.
Yeah. Um. In the next category. Actually, our numbers were more clustered together with a low of a 22. That was yours, Ken, but that was only a couple points lower than multiple 24s. 26, a couple 27s and a 28. So right there, we're around a 25 in terms of just looking at the highs and lows. Because we don't have any significant deviators in the group being strongly one way or another, would 25 be acceptable to the team?
Okay, which one was that one for?
A2.
Maybe two.
I'll live with 25, but I would allow you for 26, but that's fine.
You're allowed to lobby.
Yeah, let's stick with 25, that's fine.
Okay.
25?
Okay, in the next category, which is a total possible points of 20. Once again, we were all around 16s and 17s, a little bit of 18 with Audrey. Actually, you were the highest at a 19. So it's between the 16 and the 19, just giving you range. In lieu of that, 16 or 17 might be a reasonable number. I'm going to ask you first, Audrey, just because you were a little bit
17 would be fine.
so you'd be okay with 17 at mid. Does the group feel like that is an okay number based on our scores? And how we feel? Again, we tended to be around the same for that.
17?
And then in the final category where we only have 10 points to play with, almost all of us were 8s with a 7 and a couple 9s thrown in. I would suggest an 8 just based on almost everyone choosing it to begin with. Would we be okay with that?
I'm just gonna mention one thing. To try to sway you to a 9. They had, I believe, if somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I am pretty sure they have $250 million bonding capacity and a $600 million line of credit.
That just shows the capacity of an entire organization.
Just,
My only question would be where, I guess it depended on where we considered that to fit. Like I considered that in the A1 category as
it was presented in that, it was presented in
right.
4. So I'm just gonna state that, but I'll go with the group, but I need to make that pitch at least once here.
Yeah, and I would have pitched the other way on this based on, even though I realized that a lot of construction is construction or coastal communities. I believe when we talked to this firm, their number of actual jobs in Florida was a fraction of the others with 28, and others were in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I gotta think there are still some state and local requirements that are a little bit unique to every state. So I think we're at 8 and we're okay with that, with John and me pushing in opposite but equal directions. I'm just trying to really start.
I
We go with 8.
All right, what do we got?
Let's go twice. 8. Where does that get us as a total then?
BA 85, yep. So across the board, you have 35, 25, 17, 8. I agree with that. I do want to reiterate that all of these firms passed the financial capability portion of this, just in relation to that.
Okay, great. All right. You now have the opportunity to conduct this same exercise for the point. And we'll do the same drill. So I'll let Nicole start with her scores and reasoning. We'll go around the table.
For A1, I have 35. For A2, I have 27. For A3, I have 18, and for A4, I have 8.
Okay.
I thought that their presentation today documented that their documentation of record is excellent. They use real-time uploads, which I think is awesome and revolutionary in this field. I did note that they had a little bit less of a local presence than others. They have more than one compliance person and 3 subject matter experts, and I think that with all the federal requirements, you're gonna have questions from various different stakeholders at times, and I think having 3 subject matter experts is excellent. They have the experience, they have, 1.7 billion in confirmed CDBG-DR, FEMA, and HUD home contract values, so I think that they have the experience. I just, the local presence, I think, is just not as strong.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, for A1, I have 36, A2, 27, A3, 18, and A4, 8. I actually thought their oral presentation to me was very strong, especially compared to their proposal. Not that their proposal was bad, but I thought that their oral presentation really kind of helped them substantially, in my opinion. They definitely addressed our questions, but I felt myself struggling to ask them new questions because they had already like preemptively answered whatever I was going to ask them. So their presentation felt very well-rounded to me today. Even questions that we had asked other proposals, they had already answered. So we got a really good picture of what they're bringing to the table. Probably one thing we should have asked them is they had a whole chart about the risks that we could face. And they were the only ones that kind of presented that up front. And some of those I thought were very well thought through, just about like what happens if the homeowner doesn't respond and having to deal with that sort of thing. Other thing I liked about them was the amount of training that they said they go through with each of their subcontractors, the trauma-related training, so that they can understand the homeowners and what they're going through. They're the only ones I heard mention anything like that, so I thought that kind of really supplemented what they put in their written proposal. Especially their comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so my scores were A1 30, A2 15, A3 17, A4 7. So 30, I thought was a solid group, excellent qualifications. I noted in the written proposal, the only thing it didn't address was hazardous materials, but in their oral presentation today, they were careful to comment on hazardous materials and specifically lead-based paint. So I appreciate that. The projects, there were 4 projects in their proposal. And 2 of them I found not at all relevant to our work. One was for a building at Louisiana State University, which I'm sure is fantastic. And the second was an oil field restoration. So out of 4 projects, only 2 to me were relevant, and they were excellent projects. But I put that in the just on the edge of adequate project experience. I think if they'd had a lot of project experience, they could have put 4 projects in there. The approach I thought was excellent. I agree with the risk discussion and the trauma. Also, all the discussion they had about all the documentation, so they're always ready for an audit, I think is probably going to be very helpful to the folks on our end who have to worry about that sort of thing. And again, with the schedule and budget, I scored 7. It ticked all the boxes that I expected it to tick for that section.
Okay. 30, 15, 17, 7, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that in the extra context. Appreciate it. Brendan.
A1, I scored a 35, A2, a 27, A3 a 17, and A4 an 8. I'm gonna say a lot of the things that were already said in terms of being audit ready. I think from a compliance point of view, their method helps tremendously. The mention of county risk versus any of the other presenters I thought was excellent. Their training or community engagement I thought was important, and how their homeowner community engagement team does their outreach and all of sort of the branches that come from that straight down to the contractor. And that their 30% available resources, they make clear that they can get this project done.
Thank you. John?
34, 27, 18, 9. Same comment as Tara, they did themselves, so service by the presentation. Today, helping explain their proposal. You know, if I know, Rob, you're gonna talk about references, but they had 10 references. And I thought that was outstanding. I mean, I thought that was really good. So I would ask everybody to keep that in mind, because that's, you know, getting that many people to call you back. And, but I think every one of them said they would bring it back in. And so, I mean, you're looking for somebody who's got a solid history.
Great. Thank you.
For A1, I gave them 35, A2, 25, A3, 16, and A4, 7. Obviously, this proposer has significant CMAR experience across the Gulf states. I really appreciated their outreach strategies. This is a proposer that really focused on the importance of cultural awareness and trauma-informed communication. Probably did the best of the proposals. I also was impressed with their IMS system and dashboard, which I think will provide great utility during the duration of this project.
Thank you, Audrey.
A1 35, A2 25, A3 19, and A4 8. Did I go too fast? Okay, there's not too much I can add from what was already said before. And the comments, but I really like the customer rating form. Thought that was a cool visual. I can see us really relying on that for some commissioner type referrals and complaints, inquiries. The assembly line visual was very helpful to see at a glance everything throughout the process of a project. And then the interface or the already having access to Canopy is a huge help.
Thank you. And for my part, A1 37, A2 28, A3 18, 8 4 7. Again, a firm with deep capabilities, a lot of experience. I like they had some good information around how pre-construction services can save time, success factors. I also like the fact that the customer surveys were shown and highlighted. When it came to the orals, you know, they've worked with Horn/BDO for 15 years on every program in Florida. My earlier comment stands. I think there's value in having experience in partnerships in the past, because it allows you to hit the ground running and be clear about the process and the tools and everything. Again, as I said before, the real-time uploads I thought was great, because we care about good, timely, accurate data, and that's going to be important for us. Again, I think we talked a little bit about working with local firms, and I like the fact that they bring in a team to make sure we get going. But I got a sense from the answers that, like Dynamic, they're going to kind of build out those relationships when they're here, as opposed to maybe have them in advance. But again, I give them pretty strong scores. Going to the references, you're right about the larger number, John. And I want to say I appreciated Lemoyne had several to follow up with, and we're very on the spot around chasing them down and then in turn for those people to get back to me. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 references. 6 did in fact either reached or they did get back to me. On the numerical scores, I'll add that one of the references was Horn itself, which is legit, I believe, because I worked with them as a partner. We ended up here with a 4.6 overall average score on the 6 quantitative questions I asked. When asked about significant concerns, in general, nothing significant, performed well. One person did say there are some timeliness issues, but they were easily alleviated and they were responsive. So I think that's a reasonable response. Corrective action was implemented rapidly. And then, in terms of the question, would you have worked with them again? 5 yeses with an absolutely, would have pursued them even earlier. They were in fact chosen by an independent group for the reference I spoke to. And one person said yes, but on the overall spectrum, they were definitely above average. So those were the responses I got. Again, appreciate the number of references, and I got a chance to meet a lot of good people across the country when I called them. So that's where we were on that. Let's get to scoring for this final firm to Lemoyne. In our first category, our scores range from a high, which I gave a 37, to a low of 30, but not a drastic low, not a huge deviation. With others, numbers really hovering around 35. 4 instances of 35, there was a 34 and a 36, so that's kind of like a 35. Kim, you were at the lower end by just a few digits at 30. Would you be would you accept a 34 or a 35? Do you have a feeling either way, since you were just a little bit more critical on that?
Yeah, I'm always gonna be lower. I'm good with 35, because that does seem to be the consensus.
And that's where we want to get to.
So,
Does anyone have any, thank you, does anyone have any objections to a 35?
I concur with 35.
Okay, I think we're all in consensus, 35, and on that.
35 for A1 full.
On the next one, though, I'm sorry if you're popular, but I actually appreciate your perspectives. I do, and you did a deep dive.
Unpopular, depending.
No,
on
no.
your perspective.
So on this one, we as a group, I want to mention Kim's score in a minute, we're really around 25, 27, a few 27s and a 28. So 25 and 28 with a bunch of 27 sandwich in between. But Kim, you did have some concerns that led you to score them a 15. So that is a fairly big difference. Let's talk about that a little and make sure we know how comfortable we are where you are and we can have a conversation.
So if I'm looking at the criteria, 19 to 23 is the prime firm has more than adequate successful recent experience. 24 to 30, prime firm has superior past and recent successful experience, which is where all of you seem to have ended up, and I'm definitely the anomaly at 15. And that is solely because they gave us 4 example projects. You know, this is a large firm, clearly a lot of successful projects, clearly know what they're doing. But when they're pulling out of their pool of projects to show off to us, only 2 of them are relevant, and one is, you know, one's construction of a building, or one is an oil field restoration. So I can't, when I'm reading what the criteria is for 24 to 30, that doesn't show me superior experience with successful recent similar projects.
Can I jump in just for the relevance? If it is a CDBG-DR project, it might not be a single family, but if they use that specific funding source, then it could.
Okay,
mention it.
that is an excellent point.
But I do think the other examples were shown just to augment their DR stuff. If I remember correctly, they were saying, yeah, and we've done these other big construction.
Yeah.
Because I don't think,
Yeah.
you're right.
Because some of the Davis, like a lot of the requirements are still, you know, used in that setting, so.
Well, that could be, yes, I'm looking at the Louisiana State University Taylor Hall, their redevelopment. I can't tell, honestly, if that's a
Yeah.
disaster recovery or not, and the same with the oil field restoration.
The same ones are pollution.
So they-
Or, yeah, right.
I feel like, Kim, what they were doing, at least my notes said, they had put a bunch of projects in to show vast experience, but they actually only claimed somewhere in there, because I wrote this note, they said, look, when it comes to this type of work, we're talking about our experience being $440 million and over 7,000 homes. So I focused in on that, which I thought was in line with everybody else. That's, I think I know where you were headed there with the other ones. I had to go look at that a couple times.
Yeah.
They were just merely trying to provide a reference of general GC experience.
And that was my observation as well. I focus on the 7,000 homes
Right.
under CDBG-DR, which would have congruent criteria.
But you're not, your thing, I had to look at that 2 or 3 times.
Again.
No, we're-
You know, anyone's.
we're getting up. It's really just so that we get to a common understanding, because there's a lot to digest when we look at all of these. And I do think those other projects were supplemental, not, I don't think they were CDBG-DR. I had a note they had 5 large programs, 25 to 150 million in DR. And in the 7,000 homes, I also had notes of that. The big ones, Malicious and Restore Louisiana, were combined 300 million. So those are my notes, but either way, in terms of where we are on a scoring basis, with your being a little bit less, thoughts on the number you'd be comfortable with to start the conversation?
So could you, what was the range of our scores again?
Yep, let me read them to everyone. I'm gonna try to go low to high here. I think I can master this. So 15 Miskins, and then we had a 25, 4 27s, and a 28. I'm thinking to give you, to just kind of set the table, somewhere between maybe 23 and 26 might be reasonable, but it's dependent on your thoughts around your concerns, and I don't want to put a lot of numbers in your mind.
So a 26, I mean, it seems like that's me coming up quite a bit, but acknowledging that I'm always gonna be lower.
I think that's perfectly
And-
fine.
You know, several scores were higher than that, so I think that's a reasonable consensus for.
It's more than reasonable. Let me ask the group, how do we feel about it? So if we narrow it down, let's say 24, 25, 26 in that range, how do we feel about those numbers? Does everyone?
I have that 27.
I have it 25, so 26.
Yeah, I think 26 seems to be the midpoint. Could we live at that as a team?
Yes.
Okay, let's go with that. Thank you. 26, thank you. These next two should be a little more straightforward, only because of the fact that we're all very similar in our scorings. In A3, we had a low of a 16, but just one, and then we had a couple 17s and 4 18s. So by virtue of just majority rule on that, we'd be looking at an 18. No divergences really in terms of scoring higher or lower. Would we be satisfied with an 18 as a group?
Yeah.
Again, we were very close on that, and we're very close on the next one too. On the next one, we had 1 9, and the rest were 7s and 8s, with 3 8s, 3 7s, and 1 9. My feeling is, given that, an 8's probably kind of like the
8.
good median point for the rest of the group. We okay with that? Ethan, we get all those scores?
Let's do it. So you got a 35, 26, 18, and 8. Is that correct?
For a total of
87.
so.
So that's our 3 firms. So I'll restate the scores just for anybody that's listening online and make sure I have them all correct. So we had Ducky Recovery for A1 at a 36, A2 at a 26, A3 at an 18, and A4 at a 9, for a total of 89. We had Dynamic Group, A1 at 35, A2 at 25, A3 at 17, and A4 at 8, for a total of 85. And for Lemoyne, we had 35 for A1, 26 for A2, 18 for A3, and 8 for A4, for a total of 87. Sounds great.
Sounds good to me.
All,
So in order that'd be,
very tight shot there.
yeah, so that'd be Ducky with 89 ranked first, Lemoyne with 87 ranked second, and Dynamic with 85 ranked third. Anything else, guys?
Just a thank you to everyone here and everyone
Yes.
who proposed again. Doesn't know and notice the amount of effort we've all put into this as a collective team. So thank you.
Major thank you. Proposers, if you would, please continue to monitor UNO for future updates related to the solicitation. That will conclude our work here today and the evaluation committee meeting for RFP 25-00378. Have a good night, everyone.